Welcome to Dropping In, a podcast of storytelling and interviews with your host, Winter Olympian Mercedes Nichol.
Thank you so much for dropping in on Series 5. This is a series where we discuss shoulder season blues. Why? Because I was feeling down and I figured a lot of other people were feeling the same way this fall. The global pandemic is still in effect and it's fall. It's dark in Canada pretty early. The sports are hard to come by these days, and summer was great. I wanted to dive deep and open up the conversation about SAD, seasonal affective disorder. Let me introduce episode 43's guest that we will be dropping in with. She had a 12-year career as a professional dance artist, choreographer, and dance educator. She's got a lot of schooling behind her. She's got a lot of tools to share with us. She has a PhD in psychoeducation, an MA in human kinetics, specializing in sports psychology, and a BA honors in psychology. She is a game changer in mental health literacy, mental skills training, and optimal mental performance. She is the founder and CEO of Elysian Insight Mental Performance Solutions. She works with NFL, CFL, NHL, pro and high performance athletes, dancers, artists, military, emergency personnel, coaches, and executives, along with countless high performers in various sports and industries. This doctor, dancer, business owner, kidney cancer survivor is highly sought after. Let me introduce Chantale Lussier. Okay. Chantale Lussier, are you ready to drop in?
I sure am.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a 10-question rapid fire. Don't stress. It's not that big of a deal. It's just for all of our listeners to get to know you a little bit more.
Great.
Okay. Number one, if you could be anywhere right now in the world, where would you be?
Oh my gosh, definitely somewhere sunny. I'm thinking either Hawaii or Bali.
Yes. Oh, that's the second Bali we've had.
Oh, really?
Dr. Chanel Smythe said Bali as well.
Never been, but would love to.
I've never been either. I would love to go too. Number two, favorite season.
You know, early fall, actually. I really love early fall, even though, of course, I know we're going to talk about SAD and everything that comes with it. But here in Quebec, the changing of the colors is really beautiful. And as an avid hiker, slightly cooler temperatures, it's a really nice time to hike. But yeah, then we'll get into SAD and all that. But I love fall, the beauty of fall.
Perfect. Big city or small town?
Oh, small town girl.
Yeah. Where are you right now?
Well, I'm on the Ottawa-Gatineau region, but I grew up in the country in the Laurentian Mountains, and I'm definitely a country bumpkin, small town girl at heart.
Okay, and I asked you how you were doing, and you asked me how I was doing, and I blatantly lied and said, "Yeah, I'm good, I'm great." And I'm like, "No, actually, I'm not." It takes me a second for that to click. So when people ask you how you are you actually honest with them?
Relatively, you know, it's one of those things in society. I think we talk about it more, being honest when people are like, "How are you?"
Yeah.
Historically, I tended to be like, "Good, how are you?" And I would right away flip it. But I have to say, throughout the pandemic, without always disclosing, depending on the circumstance, I'm now much more honest about saying, "I'm okay."
Yes.
I'm okay. And I'm okay saying that I'm okay.
I think that's so true. I think that's so true. I know I do the like, wait a second. No, I'm not okay. Thank you for your honesty there. Number 5, how are you feeling about the global pandemic?
Are we done yet?
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are feeling that way, and I perhaps was naive heading into it, but literally I was one of those people where I thought, 48 weeks, we'll be through this. Clearly I was not knowing what we were in for. So yeah, like a lot of people, I'm exhausted of it.
I know. Yeah, for sure. Number 6, just to lighten it up from a global pandemic, if you had a superpower, which would it be?
There's so many good ones to pick from. Yeah. I think I might go with time travel, actually.
Oh, I love hearing every different one. It's really good. Well, I had Dr. Chanel on last, and she said photographic memory. I was like, is that a superpower? because people have that, but I respect it. If you don't have it, you want it.
I think time travel would be cool, both either going in the past to try to maybe correct something that's small but that had a big impact, personally, or like historically. That would be so cool.
Gosh, yes.
So I think I would pick that. And then curiosity about the future, of course.
Yeah. You could win the lottery.
Let's figure out how.
Make life a little easier. Or just bet on something that you know that happens in the future. Okay, number 7. When you think of the shoulder season, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Transition and temperature. Like, I think a lot of rain. So gray.
Yep. Even on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Okay, number 8. Do you have a trick for the shoulder season blues?
Oh gosh, well, goodness knows I've been thinking about this because yes, I have a lot of different tricks.
Okay.
And for me, part of it has to do with now approaching my well-being as well as my fitness and movement from a seasonal perspective, so that whatever were my main go-tos in the summer, come fall, I try to switch it up. So that'll be my rapid fire sort of answer, and we'll get more into it. But really approaching well-being from a seasonal perspective. So what do I need to be at my best in the summer versus the fall versus the winter? So, if Mother Nature is seasonal, then I figure I should bring some of those habits from a seasonal lens, right, into my life.
I love that. That's great. Number 9. Do you take any supplements?
Yes, I do actually. And I kind of brought them here because I didn't want to forget.
Perfect.
So I'm a Vega 1 every morning kind of person, which helps me as a mostly vegetarian person. It helps me ensure that I have good protein, but it also is jam-packed full of vitamins. And I find that really complements what I try to take in nutritionally. I also sometimes, depending on the season, might do vitamin C or vitamin D. And then there's 2 other staples for me. One is my omegas. And I take, with the reflection date there, I take a complement that has the 3, the 6, and the 9s.
Okay.
So that I really get all of my omegas. And then this one, from a mental health perspective, there's more and more research coming out that's really interesting. It's called LTO3.
Okay.
It's, like I said, I won't go all scientific, especially in a rapid fire situation.
They're never rapid.
But certainly they've been shown to help stress, anxiety, depression, ADD. So from a mitigating depression, seasonal blues, there's some interesting research coming out, but it also actually increases mental acuity. So, a focus or concentration that getting all those neurons firing effectively, which sometimes we don't feel when we're kind of in that fall fog, right? Or the pandemic fog too. So LT30, LTO3 has some really interesting research and growing support. So that's something that I've in recent times have added.
I think someone told me about that, and I'm glad that we're going to dive a little deeper into that, because in the last episode with Britt Janik, I talk about how I took a wrong turn in Vancouver and ended up going downtown by accident over the Lionsgate Bridge. And I was like, that was a little bit of a fog I had going on.
And I would imagine that's probably like in Montreal. If you take one wrong turn, you're not just turning around, but you're on that highway for a while or across that bridge.
Anyways, I digress. Number 10, the last question, a very vulnerable question. Do you get the seasonal blues?
Oh, 100%. 100% I do. And again, I mean, research stats, certainly in Canada, I think the average statistic that tends to be thrown around a lot is that as much as 80% of Canadians get it. So, I mean, we are in good company. We are not alone in this. And again, Mother Nature affects so much, right? So certainly a humble stance in front of Mother Nature, that of course the cyclical patterns of nature are going to have an effect on us. But as soon as it gets colder in Canada, up to 80% of Canadians, October, November to February, March,
I know, you blew my mind that you're like, well, we've got time. This happens until February. And I was like, oh, you're not wrong.
Yeah. But again, it depends. Probably like the climate in Whistler is a bit different than the climate in Ottawa-Gatineau, right?
Yeah.
So when do those colder temperatures hit? When does the rainy season hit? And then it fluctuates from season to season. Like right now here in Ottawa-Gatineau, we had, I would say, more of a rainy October. So October that I usually love was kind of like, but right now we're having unseasonably warm and sunny November.
Amazing. Are
Right.
you? We just got snow in Whistler. I'm currently in Mexico for the listeners that are listening, but I escaped all the dreary weather. And then it just snowed like a foot in Whistler. So I feel like that may be turning some frowns upside down.
Yeah, especially for all of us who love getting in the snow and having some fun.
Yeah. What about well, thank you for doing the rapid fire. I really appreciate it. It opens everyone's eyes up to a lot of different things. But what about people in like California that are in the sun all the time? Do they get a seasonal depression, would you say?
Gosh, that's a really great question, and I'm unprepared to answer
Oh,
it.
that's
I
okay.
have not researched that. I have to say that whenever I've looked up seasonal depression and what
Mm,
some of the research now says is actually considered major depression with a seasonal pattern, I tend to see it more for the northern climate.
yeah.
So I haven't come across research or information about more southern warm climates. Do they experience it as well?
Yeah. I'm
Um,
wondering because I in one of the episodes I say that like if you're above the equator and I was like, well, is that actually right? Maybe it's above like the 49th parallel, but maybe that's even still too high and the equator's too low. So I'm like, where does this start happening?
Well, a lot of this has to do with circadian rhythm and our exposure to light, right? So
Mhm.
any geographical region that has all of a sudden a reduced amount of daylight, I think
Mhm.
is going to be susceptible to it. And
Yeah.
then I think there's other factors that are both environmental, but that affect our behavior, like when it gets colder, when it gets rainier, when all of a sudden people's behaviors might actually change as well, right?
Yeah.
So um, who knows, maybe in some of the southern states when they have their rainy season, maybe some people are affected because their behavior and their wellness habits change.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I mean, Britt and I, she's an Olympian, talked about we didn't have golf in our lives anymore. So obviously we have a sport background. We're always doing something, but I don't know what happened this fall. It just hit, if it was the pandemic as well, where I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be totally fine. I didn't have golf for a couple months. And I'm just like, what? No, I'm not fine. And Neville, who's on later, I recorded with him, and he's had that at the beginning of the pandemic. So really, it's just different for everyone, which is completely understandable. But what do we do? Help, help, help.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, certainly the elephant in the room is the pandemic, right? There's an accumulative, um, chronic, almost like a chronic stress that we have now experienced, right? And on one hand, I think all of us have tried to look at the silver lining, like in what ways has this massive change improves our lives by being at home and this, that, and another. But needless to say, it has caused social, economic, and mental health challenges that I think are not going to disappear just with one good weekend of re-socializing,
No.
because we've been chronically maintaining this mild stress for a really long time. So last fall, those of us who might be susceptible to SAD would have experienced it.
Yeah.
But I think now we're almost 2 years in and we're like, are we done yet? And so those cycles all of a sudden are impacting us a little bit bigger. So I think, what do we do? I mean, part of it is looking at what's within our control, right? And what are those daily habits that are going to support wellness? So um, I know for me, one of the things is, coming from the performance background as well, and
Mm-hmm.
supporting athletes, everything in nature in the fall, you look at animals and they're preparing to hibernate and everything kind of is telling your body, oh, just go have a nap. But the reality, for example, when I look at a lot of my clients who are high performing athletes, pro athletes, or student athletes,
Yeah.
things actually rev up come September,
Right.
right? So all of a sudden here you have this season where you kind of want to take it a bit slower and take care of yourself, but your social responsibilities, the
The
demands of your
opposite.
sport, the demands of work might be revving up. So I try to think of my daily habits in terms of activation and relaxation.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And obviously I'm not talking in terms of like how do I activate to have an optimal performance, but
Yeah.
right now it's literally in the morning. How do I slowly but surely activate to have a great day?
Hmm.
And then at the end of the day, how do I use relaxation strategies to gear down effectively from my day? So I kind of use that language for myself and with my clients. And I find it's effective because, you talk to an athlete about activation,
Yep.
that right away gets us going. What does my body need? What does my brain, what does my spirit need? Right?
Yeah, totally. And then one thing that's kind of difficult when it's so dark and rainy out is actually getting that motivation to get going. And is there a trick that you have? I call it a trick. Is it a reality like that you use for your clients, like how to help self motivate? Because I know accountability for me is one thing. I just did a workout with a friend who's in Canada and I'm in Mexico. I'm like, let's just do this together.
Yeah.
Is there something else other than accountability, would you say, to others that would help motivate to work out and get moving?
I think the social support, we've had to become really creative, right?
Mhm.
Especially when we're quote unquote dislocated in remote environments that we may or may not get to work out with the buddy all the time. Like
Yeah.
a lot of places have reopened up and maybe we can, but there's still a lot of people who are training on their own or at home, most days of
Mhm.
the week. Um, for me, it's been about changing the time of when I connect with people. Like I used to be one of those people who would socially connect more late in the afternoon or evening. You call up a friend or you make plans. And now I'm like, I want to text someone in the morning. I want to get a text in the morning because that'll just be something that kicks off my day in a really uplifting way.
Yeah.
And so that social support piece earlier in the day, I think is a nice thing
Mhm.
that's easy to implement. That's both accountability, but it's also filling up the tank of joy, if you will, right?
Yeah, I love that social support.
Yeah.
I also find putting things like in my calendar that are just that don't really need to be there, but putting in that I'm going to do the workout. So then if I'm not accountable to someone else, I'm accountable to myself.
Yeah. You know what I started actually early on in the pandemic? I started, a lot of us like I use my Outlook calendar, and of course I can color code like this is for
Yeah.
work, this is family, this is personal.
Yeah.
Um, Orange is health and fitness. But I picked a color as well for social because I was
Uh,
realizing like I kind of have a bit of it's a sad joke, but I'm like, I'm living a little too much like a groundhog in my own little because of the
yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
And so, quite literally, now when I look at my calendar, I can look at where my fitness and health habits,
Yeah.
along with my work and my family, but then I'm looking for that social connection. Have I gone like all week or even maybe 2 weeks without actually planning something with people I care about
Yeah.
where I'm going to have a good time? I'm going to laugh. We're going to support each other.
Yeah.
So just color coding my calendar specifically for social connection has made a big difference.
Let's get organized, people.
Yeah.
I guess when I think of that is what is like the optimal day for people, like sorry, not day, amount of time for people to go without being social. I know there's introverts and extroverts. Is it different for everyone?
I think it does vary, but I think the pandemic has gotten all of us to revisit that. Like
Mhm.
I would consider, even though I love human beings and obviously my work is all about connecting meaningfully with
Mhm.
other people, but I am an introvert. I need a lot of alone time to refill my cup, etc. But even I've been saying I'm like the pandemic is too much alone time. So
Yeah.
I think we need to recognize that. And the other piece that I've recognized too is that, for example, maybe once upon a time when pre-pandemic, maybe I would go for a hike, and the hike was really something that I would say would be quality solitude. It'd be time
Mhm.
for me to be in the forest, to enjoy nature, and to kind of take care of myself.
Yeah.
Now I bring quite literally a different focus style. So my focus style now is much more external when I go out into the world. Now I'm going to make sure I say hi to every hiker that I
Mm.
see. Or if I stop to get my coffee, I'm not going to be in a rush. I'm going to take the 30 seconds to actually say hi to the barista, and have that little mini interaction
Mhm.
because I think all of us need that more. And instead of kind of being so closed off,
Mhm.
I think it's about being open to those more organic connections and valuing them, which
Mhm.
perhaps before the pandemic, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, those things may not have been valued like maybe we need to now. So I'm kind
I
of
love
taking.
that. I hope everyone does that. Say hello to strangers, people. It's okay. I find in Vancouver, I don't go down there very often, but it's very cliquey and people are closed off. And I don't know if we can take one thing away from the pandemic is saying hi to everyone and being kind, because you still don't know what that other person is going through at
You
all.
really don't. And I think all of us need to feel seen and visible, right?
Mhm.
So whether it's just walking down the sidewalk and someone bumps into your shoulder, like if you haven't seen a human being for 3 days,
Yeah.
that's going to hurt, right? But if someone actually looks up from their phone when they're walking and actually just takes a minute to have eye contact and say, hi, have a
Yeah.
good day, or
Oh, it
just
means so much. I think it's so lovely. I mean, some people may think it's too much, but to each their own.
absolutely.
Now you work with a ton of different sports and teams and the CFL. You've been a very busy woman, so I'm glad that we got a hold of you. How's it looking out there? Are you just fully booked all the time?
Well, it fluctuates. My work, as you can imagine, is very seasonally based, right? Whether I'm
Mhm.
working with summer athletes or winter athletes, and whether they're preseason, in season, postseason. So there, needless to say, there's a lot of dynamic to my work. So no, it is busy, keeps me on my toes, but I sure love it. So
Yeah, yeah,
I'm glad.
and not just athletes have their ups and downs. That's what Britt and I were saying. We're like, we're Olympians, yes, but we don't have it figured out. That's why I'm doing this whole series, is to kind of get the tools to help everyone muster through this, because it's going to happen again.
It is. And I think this is where we realize as human beings, whether it's the CEO of a corporation, a solo entrepreneur, whether it's a high performing athlete, or I work also, with military members and with performing artists, like the one thing we all have in common is we're human, and we're all trying to figure out how to drive these brains effectively, and how to live fulfilling, joyful lives, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, we have a lot more in common than we realize sometimes.
I love that. Any other tips of the trade for SAD, seasonal
Yeah,
affective disorder?
there's so much, I know today we're just relatively going through things quickly, but I look at morning routine and evening routine. And like I said, this activation and relaxation strategy. So for me, even recently, adding progressive muscle relaxation in the evening just before bed. It's something I know, it's something I recommend to my athletes all the time. But with my lifestyle now, it's not something I had done in a while. And all of a sudden, I had a few athletes doing it, and I was like, I'm going to do it too. Needless to say, of course, the quality of my sleep was so much better, right?
Yes.
Um,
Easier
so
said than done. Easier said than done. That's
it,
like meditation. It's
yeah,
so much easier said than done when you can just like, oh, how's everyone else doing in the world? And scroll on your phone and you're just like, okay, everyone's great. I'm not great. I need better sleep. Like click that, flip that switch to actually take the time for yourself. And the reason I'm saying this out loud is because I need to do it.
well, and honestly, I think certain things, especially in the high performing world and athlete world, like we tend to think if we're going to do something, we're all in and it's got to be the top notch version, right? But
Yes.
it's amazing how doing 5 to 10 minutes in the morning and 5 to 10 minutes in the evening from a well being and mental health perspective will make a difference, right? So, like right now, I've got my lemon water, which is something I sip on all day long, but especially in the morning. Citrus scent is activating, and then on top of that, lemon water of course is good for flushing the system and has all kinds of health benefits, plus
Yes.
vitamin C. But all of a sudden, again, we are creatures of habit. So the smell of lemon for me in the morning, early afternoon, has that like bright sunshiny wake up feeling. There's a reason why, how many body washes are citrus, if you want to have like the morning wake up feeling, right?
I did not know that.
Yes, I mean, lemon water, tons of great health benefits, but even sort of scent therapy, if you will, right? Can do a world of good.
I'm
The other,
gobsmacked. I didn't know
the,
that.
well, and perhaps
Citrus.
I could bring a little something. The other piece, I don't know if anyone has talked about it, but sun
Mm-hmm.
lamps. Have you
Yeah.
ever tried that?
I haven't tried it. In an episode coming up, Dr. Chanel talks about it, and I didn't realize that it's like a completely different light
Yeah.
that's in your face.
Yeah, and on average, like there's lots of different models out there. I'm not a rep for any of them,
Yeah, yeah.
but basically, you want to get 2,500 to 10,000, what's called lux, LUX, which is a brightness level.
Okay.
And what I do, quite literally, like just to show that this doesn't have to be an hour in the morning of meditation, an hour at night. Like in the morning when I have my breakfast
Yeah.
and I'm sitting at my dining room table and I've got my lemon water and my cup of tea, I tend to do like 5 to 15 minutes of reading. So it's literally a 5 to 15-minute routine.
Yeah.
But I turn that lamp
And your
on
eyes
my
have to
dining.
be open, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not like you can meditate and do that because your
Um,
eyes are supposed to be open.
Yeah, some people meditate with their eyes open though as well. So it
Oh,
depends. Like sometimes I will do some meditation. Most of the time I do it with my eyes closed, but sometimes there's certain meditations I do looking out the window. So you
how
could
long, how long do you meditate for?
it depends on the Calm app, which is one of the apps I use.
Yeah.
The daily Calm or most meditations are 10 to 12 minutes.
Okay.
Um, I also do Muse training, which is with the headband, and that's a
Okay.
bit of bio-neurofeedback, which I love, and some of my clients do as well.
Yes.
And I do sometimes 5-minute increments,
Yep.
and sometimes if I do the different types, I will do 15 minutes.
That
Um,
seems manageable.
very manageable. Very.
You just hear about meditation like when you're starting, you're like, yeah, just spend an hour doing it. And you're like, really? That's not quite
I
manageable.
mean, I think the one thing that I always say to my clients who are like, okay, I'm willing to try it, but I've quote unquote failed at
Right.
meditation before, I'm bad at it.
Yeah.
People think that, right? And I always say when you first sit down to meditate, it's literally like your brain and every single thought you've ever repressed is like,
Yeah.
oh, she's paying attention now. So you kind
Yeah.
of get bombarded with the thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But the simple task, really, if I was to summarize meditation as a whole, is to practice being a witness.
Oh,
Just notice. You don't have to do anything with the thoughts that come up. Just notice them. Just notice them. Don't engage with them. Just notice them. And all of a sudden, I think we realize, like, to me, meditation is mental decluttering.
yes.
I'm
I know.
going in
I love that.
there to see what's all hanging out. And I'm just
Yeah.
going to go, don't need that thought. Don't need to engage with that one. And it's mental decluttering. And if you can find those blissful gaps between thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
well, how amazing. But I might only get like the Muse headband, for example, gives me feedback. Some days out of 5 minutes, I'll have like 4 minutes and 50 seconds of calm. And I'm like, yes. But there's other days where I'm lucky if I got 2 minutes of calm and
Yeah.
the other 3 minutes was relatively active. But it
Right.
was still meaningful. It was
Yeah.
my mental decluttering.
Okay. If you're not sold on meditation, listeners, then I don't know what to tell you. I want to go do it right now. Oh, I love it. Okay. So before we finish up, any other tools that people could use if they potentially are dealing with SAD right now?
I guess that my two closing thoughts would be, I think sometimes we're so, especially when we're struggling, and I say that as someone who has always struggled with depression, including SAD, we tend to be hyper focused on how to mitigate our sadness and how to address the depression, which is part of it. But I think we forget about cultivating our joy.
Ah,
The whole filling up our cup, like, and at times like this, it's what's actually going to make me laugh today? What's going to make me smile today? What's going to inspire me today? Right.
yeah.
And so if I can finish with a super quick little story, maybe
Please.
2 weeks ago, I had technically tried to book a week off.
Good try.
Yeah, good try. Good try, Chantale. The universe did not approve my holiday. I say this totally tongue in cheek because it turned out to be literally the busiest week of my entire calendar year. But here's what was so interesting about it, Mercedes. I was so re-energized and so joyful because all of a sudden in like 4 days, I gave 5 team talks. All of a
Amazing.
sudden I was surrounded with people instead of just at home. All of a sudden I was engaged in content I loved and the opportunity to share, contribute, help. And all of a sudden I was getting out of the house and going to a lot of different places. And so it reminded me, yes, sometimes we need the rest, the recovery, the self-care.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to change the stimulus, the stuff
Yes.
that'll fill your cup, that'll cultivate joy. So that's something that I think is really important. And maybe we don't talk about that piece enough.
I
So
don't
what's
think we
going to make
do.
you laugh? What's going to bring you joy?
Yeah.
You know, and what's gonna ultimately re-inspire you to re-engage with life.
I know sometimes I just remember when I was like deep in it, I was like crying and I was like, I have things. I should be happy. And it doesn't have to do with things. I realized that I hadn't been around people, and that's what does fill my cup, is laughing and being with friends and doing the things I love. And I think later on in the series, Neville will be on the next episode. And he does say that. He's like, you got to find the things that make you happy. And I think when it gets dark, we kind of forget about those things and you're just like in turmoil. I really, really, really appreciate that. Find your joy. That's so important. So important. So great. Thank you so, so very much for taking the time to drop in today. I took away so much. I mean, I'll put in the notes about that, that lamp, that sun lamp, and the specs that you should have. Also, all the supplements that you take. Amazing. And we do have Dr. Chanel Smythe on as well to kind of dive deeper into what those supplements do, which I find so exciting and necessary in life. And I don't take any of them. So I need to start filling my cup more too. And hopefully the listeners learned a lot as well. Thank you. Thank you so much for dropping in today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks so much for dropping in. You can find all the dropping in episodes on the Dean Blundell Network or on your preferred podcast network, where you can subscribe and not miss an episode.